Hey Sugar Geeks, Liz here. Today we're going to make a rainbow cake. Yes, I'm aware this video is probably about 5 years too late, but it doesn't matter because I need to make a rainbow cake, so I'm gonna take you guys along for the ride, and it's coming up next on the Sugar Geek Show. Okay, so to make our rainbow cake, the first thing we gotta do is make our rainbow layers. I'm using my white velvet vanilla cake because it is so good and it's so easy to color. Just mix up your batter, divide it into 6 bowls. Mine were about 15 ounces per bowl. And then you're gonna add your coloring to each bowl. I'm using electric colors because I'm going for kind of that Lisa Frank neon color rainbow instead of the classic rainbow, but you could totally do classic if that's what you wanna do. Then I'm gonna divide these all into 6 8-inch cake pans. If you only have a couple of cake pans, then you can bake 2 and then just put your bowls in the fridge until they're ready to bake off. I'm actually putting parchment paper in the bottom of my cake pans because these are gonna be really thin, delicate layers when they first come out of the oven. So the parchment paper is not there to keep them from sticking. It's just there to keep them from falling apart when they come out of the pan when they're super warm. For the purple, I'm adding about a 1/4 teaspoon of electric pink and then a 1/2 teaspoon of electric purple because the pink will help bring some life to that purple color. If you use straight purple, it just kind of looks dull and blah. Blue, about a 1/2 teaspoon, super easy. For green, we're gonna do the same thing as the purple. We're just gonna do just a little bit of yellow and then mostly the electric green, and that's gonna brighten up that green and make it look more alive. About a 1/4 teaspoon of yellow and a 1/2 teaspoon of green. Yellow, super easy, just a 1/2 teaspoon. Orange, we're gonna do just a little bit of yellow, maybe an 1/8 or a 1/4 of a teaspoon, and then about a 1/2 teaspoon of orange and mix that up until it's combined. And then for pink, 1/2 teaspoon. So these bake for about 20 minutes, but you might need to bake them for a little bit longer. I noticed that certain cakes baked faster than others and I have no idea why. So just keep an eye on them. When they just start to pull away from the edge of the pans, that's when they're done. Don't take them out too early or the center could collapse and that would be no bueno. And then I'm just gonna put those on a cooling rack to cool for about 10 minutes or until the pan can be touched without it being too hot. And then I'm just gonna flip them over onto the cooling rack to cool fully, or at least until they're just barely warm. And then I'm gonna pop them in the freezer for about 30 minutes so that I can start stacking my cake. While your cakes are cooling, you can go ahead and make up your buttercream. I'm using my easy buttercream frosting because I'm going with easy. Just add in your egg whites, your powdered sugar, mix that up, add in your butter, salt, vanilla, voila, buttercream. I'm also adding just a tiny bit of purple food coloring and a little bit of white food coloring just so that it's super bright white. So now we're ready to decorate. If your cakes are stuck to the cooling rack, you can just get them off with your bench scraper. These already look really beautiful, but they have just a little bit of brown around the edges, so I'm gonna go ahead and trim that off with my knife. Don't worry about whether or not you're wasting cake to do this. It's all about the presentation at this point. And then I'm gonna trim off that top piece. Just gonna bring my knife just under that little brown skin and I'm rotating around as I'm cutting just to kind of start things off, and then rotate, little slice, letting the knife do all the work. I'm just gonna take that little skin off. It's barely anything. But look how beautiful that purple layer is underneath. So you should end up with a cake layer. This is just under 1 inch tall, so that's perfect. Because we're gonna have 6 layers of cake, so that's gonna be a very tall cake. And we're gonna have buttercream in between, so it's gonna be a very big cake, but it's gonna be delicious and beautiful. I have an 8-inch cake board here. I'm just gonna start stacking my cakes on top of that and just continue on with the rest of my trimming. And then honestly, my favorite part, just pick up all that plastic wrap and it's clean. Okay, time to stack. Got my turntable, little non-skid pad, my 8-inch round. Just put your first layer down, make sure it's nice and centered. Add some buttercream. Boop. We're shooting for a 1/4 inch of buttercream between all the layers. Enough to look pretty, but not so much that it's gonna make our cake too tall. Try and hold your spatula just nice and straight. Next, blue. Make sure it's staying nice and straight. The more careful you are during this part, the better your layers are gonna look. The first time I made a rainbow cake was way back in the day when my business was Artisan Cake Company, and I took a white box mix and just colored it with food coloring, and it turned out okay, but the layers were so delicate, it was actually super hard to cut. And that was before I came up with the white velvet recipe, and this recipe is seriously the best. I use it for so many things because it's so versatile, it's super soft, it doesn't get over mixed when you add color to it. It's the best. If you did not chill your cakes, this part would be so hard to do because the cakes are so soft when they first come out of the oven. They're very delicate. So you definitely want to work with chilled cakes. Freezing them is my way of getting it done pretty quickly. And then after this is done being frosted and decorated, you don't have to put it back into the fridge. You can just leave it at room temperature so that those cakes get warmed up and they taste nice and soft and delicious again when it's time to cut into it. Look how massive this cake is. It's gonna be crazy. Okay, time to crumb coat. All right, we're just gonna smooth out all that buttercream that's squished out the sides. These are gonna be some really tall slices of cake. This is technically a double barrel, I would say, but we can't put any cardboard in between, otherwise it's not gonna be a rainbow slice. Smooth out the top. And then I'm gonna place this into the freezer or fridge, wherever you have room, for 20 minutes or so, just until the buttercream is firmed up. I paddled this buttercream on my KitchenAid mixer on low for about 10 minutes just to kind of get some of those bubbles out. It's still kind of bubbly. Luckily it's just for my son, so don't have to worry about it too much. He's only 6 months old. I don't think he's gonna mind yet. All right, I'm using my giant Fat Girl Cakes bench scraper. Go back and fill in any holes. The trick to getting the straight sides with your bench scraper is not to hold 90 degrees this way. You want to hold kind of at 45 degrees, so it's got a little bend in it. And as long as you hold it flat against the turntable, your sides will be straight. Now I will spend the next forever patching holes, filling little pock marks, all that fun stuff. I'm gonna put this back into the freezer for another 10 minutes just to firm that outside layer of buttercream so I can get a really super smooth coat. So into the freezer I go one more time. All right, I'm gonna use the edge of my offset spatula to just kind of really scrape down that top to get it nice and smooth. And I'm going to use my bench scraper to smooth that down, little bits at a time. Chilled cake is the secret to sharp edges. Got one little small hole right there in the middle. After you have the sides pretty much straight and flawless, when you do your very final pass, you don't want to press super hard with your bench scraper because it picks up the ridges from your cardboard. So you just want to go real light. Just clean up those top edges. All right, so I've got some fancy sprinkles here. We're going to put those in a bowl. Just take my cake. It's nicely chilled, so I'm not going to ruin it. And just put a little bit of the sprinkles around the bottom of the cake. Then just going to transfer that to a cake board. Okay, so now we're going to make the water ganache. Water ganache is just candy melts and water. Makes a great drip. You can color it with just regular food coloring, and it's super easy. So I'm going to weigh out 6 ounces of candy melts, or you could use almond bark or just some cheap chocolate. And then I'm going to add just 1 ounce of hot water and microwave that together for another 15-20 seconds or so. And then I'm just going to mix that all up. It's going to look really weird and curdled at first, but just keep mixing until it comes together. Now I'm going to add in about half a teaspoon of yellow food coloring, and then I'm going to mix that together until it's nice and smooth. This is going to just help that gold drip look more of a gold color. I'm going to pour this into a piping bag. It's really important that your cake is chilled for the next part. Snip off the tip, and I'm going to do a little test to make sure that it's the right consistency. You want it to stop dripping about halfway down. That's good, and I'm just going to start dripping. Drip, come over, drip. Some people are really precise with their drips. I'm not about that life. Just like to go with it. And then I'm going to go ahead and coat the top of my cake all in chocolate. Just smooth that out. You could use a spatula if you have one. And then I'm just going to put this in the fridge to chill before we paint it. So now I'm going to go ahead and paint my drip with some gold. I have Truly Mad Plastics Super Gold mixed with a little bit of Everclear here because it's the shiniest gold. You just want to make sure that the consistency is really thick so you get good coverage. So the reason why we colored our chocolate this yellowish brown color is so we don't have to go all the way to the edges. You just kind of color the top. You can also use gold paint from Rainbow Dust, from Edible Artist Decorative Paints, Poppy Paints. There's a lot of gold paint options out there. All right, so now I'm going to finish this up with some swirls of buttercream. I'm using a 1M piping tip. And then I'm going to put some sprinkles on top. And then we're done. Hopefully you guys have enjoyed this rainbow cake tutorial. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, and I'll see you guys next week. Bye!